Hello, welcome back to my channel. I am really excited because I bought myself a new lens, so hopefully you're noticing that this video is a little bit higher quality than the last video. I've been loving filming, so I decided I'm gonna continue investing in it because it makes me happy. So today, as you saw by the title, I'm gonna be chatting about my fitness journey. I really wanted to just have a place where all of my journey is just laid out, because I share a lot about it on Instagram, but it tends to be in like little chunks. And so I wanted this video to just be one place where I kind of chat through my journey. So let's get things started. I think that my fitness journey actually starts like a really long time ago. I was an athlete growing up. I was a competitive swimmer. I started swimming on swim team when I was 4 years old. So like pretty much my whole life. Like I genuinely don't remember a time in my life when I wasn't swimming, which is kind of crazy. I did rec swimming, so it was just over the summer. It's a really big thing where I grew up in the East Bay area. Like rec swim is huge. It's definitely a California thing. I can totally acknowledge that, but yeah. So started when I was 4, loved it. I was on the same team until I was 6, and then I moved over to another swim team, and that swim team was where I met some of my very best friends. We are still friends to this day, and I swam every single summer. In fact, I like wouldn't go on vacation. Like I would tell my parents, like, I don't want to go on vacation because I don't want to miss swim practice. Like I loved it so much, and I was fairly good at it. There was like a meet that you had to qualify for, and I qualified for it like every year. Not me flexing being a fast swimmer when I was like 6, but I was. And I loved it, made my best friends, and it was what I knew. To me, exercise was swimming because it's what I've been doing since I was 4. Again, swim team was only over the summer. I would do like swim clinics and stuff here and there to like stay in shape, and you know, because I loved it. But a lot of swimmers, they try out water polo, and so I did that. I think my first time I ever played was in like 6th grade. Tried it out, and I don't know, it's hard because now I'm looking back from a different time, but I want to say that I hated it from the get-go. Like I genuinely can't remember a time where I was like, I really love water polo. Like I think that it was I liked it and I did it because I was in the water. There was swimming involved, and yeah. But I never made friends through water polo in the same way that I made friends through swim team. And I think that piece of things too also made me not like it and love it in the way that I loved swim team. So anyways, I played polo. I would just do it usually like in the fall. Yeah, I played polo pretty much during the school year, and I swam over the summer for the most part. I kind of peaked as a swimmer, my swim career, if you can call it that considering I was a child. Peaked when I was like 13 or 14. My group of friends and I, we were also a relay team, and we set quite a few records that year. Some of them we still hold, which is kind of crazy to think about considering I'm like 22 now, and I was like 13 then. And yeah, I was fast myself. And I just loved it. Like I loved it so much then. And so the summer after I was 14, that was when I started high school. And you know, there's sports in high school, and so I knew I was gonna play. Also, just a side note about my high school. So I went to private school all my life. And so my high school, like, you know, a traditional public high school, like you go to high school with the people that you went to middle school with, but since mine was private, it wasn't like that. Everyone from my middle school kind of went to different high schools. There was like 5 of us that went to the same high school as me. I went to an all-girls school, and it was very intense. It was very competitive. One of my friends from middle school, she came to high school with me. So I had her, but other than that, like I was really trying to meet friends, okay? And that was hard for me because I had grown up with the same people since I was literally in kindergarten, and I had friends since then. So it was the first time I ever had to really make new friends. I knew I was gonna play sports, and I thought, hey, this will be a great way to meet people. So fall is water polo. Tried out for water polo. I ended up making varsity water polo. I was the only freshman who made the varsity team, and I was pretty hyped about it. Like I definitely was like, oh, I'm pretty good at this. Like I made varsity, and that was cool to me. Looking back, it was more of a negative thing for me because I was the only freshman on the team, and therefore, although I liked the girls on the team, and a lot of them like I really looked up to, and you know, it wasn't the same. Like no one was my age, no one was going through that same freshman year that I was going through. In high school, each year is just so different. You know, in college, it's so much more common to like be friends with someone in a different grade than you, but in high school, it's like it's not as much of a thing. And so I just never made friends really on the team. And again, I didn't love the sport. Like my favorite part of games was sitting on the bench. Like if that's not a red flag, I don't know what a red flag is. But yeah, finished my first polo season. And then in the spring, it was swim season. This is my first season. I wanted to make varsity so bad. Like I had made it on water polo. Again, I loved swimming. I was like, Hannah, you're gonna make varsity. Like I tried so hard during tryouts. I tried so hard during time trials and I ended up making varsity. But this time there was another freshman who made the team. Actually, there was quite a few. So again, I mentioned I did rec swimming, but there's also year-round swimming, which is like way more intense. And so pretty much everyone who does year-round, they're on varsity, but they don't practice. When you're on year-round, you're allowed to practice with your year-round team, or at least that's how it was at my high school. So they didn't practice with us. But there was one other girl who also swam rec who made varsity. So that was like really huge for me. Her and I became really good friends. We're still friends to this day. And my first high school swim season was fun. Like, you know, it was fun. I finally really started meeting those friends that I had wanted to meet during water polo, right? So I had like a friend group through swim, which was just what I had needed. What sports had always been for me and what I had lacked a lot during water polo, I had gotten in that swim. But yeah, my first season went really well. You know, it was a little challenging because again, I had done rec swimming and I had always been at the top of rec swimmers, but then you get into high school swim and you're swimming against all these year-round swimmers. And it was a whole new ball game, but it was a fun challenge for me. And I did rec over the summer. Sophomore year started, and this is when things started taking a turn, may we say, in my life and in my fitness journey and my health journey and everything. Sophomore year was when things kind of peaked for me, right? I mentioned previously that my school was very intense and competitive, and I had really fed into that like my freshman year, and just transferring to that school. At my old school, I was always just naturally kind of top of the class, like smart, aka I got good grades, which doesn't really show intelligence. But anyways, in high school it was different. I had to work really, really hard. And again, like freshman year, I'd struggled for a long time to like make a solid friend group. And so therefore I turned to schoolwork a lot. I really threw myself into my schoolwork, into my performance in that area of my life, as kind of almost a distraction to the feelings that the loneliness that I was feeling, and just the general like discomfort of growing up. Like I think that age is just a tough age for anyone. But sophomore year, I started to, again, I was a varsity athlete. I was gaining weight, I was gaining muscle, and I was gaining healthy weight. Like I was getting older, right? And I was gaining healthy weight. But growing up, I had always been thin, and I had learned, as many women do, that my worth was associated with my thinness, right? I was praised for being thin from a very young age, and somewhere along the line, the cultural belief that thin was better, and I began to accept that belief as my own. But again, sophomore year, over the summer, and then, you know, beginning of the school year, I gained weight, okay? Again, I wasn't like overweight, I was fine, it was healthy weight, but it freaked me out, right? I was really unhappy in areas of my life. I was stressed all the time because I was always studying, and I had gained this weight, and it made me feel uncomfortable, and I missed the praise of being really thin, and I felt like my worth was less now that I was not so thin. And so water polo season started. I started being really unhappy again because again, I was devoting so much time to a sport that didn't make me happy. And I decided that I wanted to lose weight. And so I vividly remember the first thing I ever cut out was the drinks, was liquid calories, because at polo games we would have, there was, you know, those squirty Gatorade bottles. We would have, some of them had water in them, some of them had Gatorade in them. I always opted for the Gatorade, but I said, I'm gonna stop drinking that. So I did. Didn't really notice any changes. So I was like, we gotta step this up a notch. I stopped eating dessert. Okay. Then I started noticing some changes, and I said, ooh, like this feels kind of good. Like I'm stressed, I'm unhappy, but I have this control over my body and over my intake, and this feels good. And so I kept going. I kept cutting things out of my diet. And at this point I was losing weight. Like I was losing weight. And it felt good. It felt really good. And so I just kept going, and no one noticed. People started complimenting me again about my weight. I made it through water polo season. I was miserable by the end of it because I was spending all this time doing things I didn't want to do. I had at this point lost some weight. I wasn't exercising as much anymore. And so I kind of ramped up how little I was eating. So I like probably at that point had like, I was barely eating. I'm gonna leave it at that. I was barely eating. A lot of this period, this phase of my fitness journey, my life journey is kind of a blur, probably because my brain wasn't functioning properly. And also probably because I was just so miserable that I blocked it out. But I do have two specific memories. The first being, I remember there was like an ice skating rink in my town that was like happened during the winter. And I remember going with my friends, and then afterwards they wanted to get like pizza after. And I remember having to leave. Like couldn't drive at this point. So I remember calling making someone come pick me up to take me home because I could not eat with them at that restaurant. I just couldn't do it. And I remember coming home and eating the carrots and apple that I was eating for lunch every day and just being like, yes, this feels so safe. But I also remember it was like two conflicting emotions. Like part of me was like, oh, this feels so safe and this feels so good. There was another part of me that was like, this is wrong. Why can't I go eat out with my friends, right? That happened. And then there was another moment where I vividly remember waking up in the middle of the night because I was starving, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and I remember just laying there, and I remember starting to cry because I was like, Hannah, you have a problem. Like, you have an eating disorder. Like, that's what this is. This is an eating disorder. And I remember crying because I didn't know how to ask for help. I remember being like, Hannah, you need to get help for this. Like, truly talking to myself, like, Hannah, you need to get help. But then I remember being like, but I don't know how. And that was so scary. And that was the loneliest I've ever felt in my life, okay? That's the two biggest parts of my eating, of like being deep in my eating disorder before getting help, that really stand out to me. Another part that's important to note, I think, is that my family and I went to Hawaii over Christmas break. I was thin at this point, like skin and bones thin. Like, I'm not gonna show pictures because I think it does more harm than good to show those photos. And my dad, like, told my mom, he was like, I think there's something wrong with Hannah. Like, I think she has an eating disorder. She has anorexia. Like, she needs to get help. But I denied it. Like, the thing about eating disorders is you deny it so hard, right? So, like, they approached me, they talked to me about it, and I said, no, I'm fine. Like, watch, tomorrow I'll eat normally. Because this was the thing, this trip, like, my parents both worked a lot, which was, I am in no way, shape, or form complaining about that. That's how I'm able to be here today. But my parents were busy a lot, and I was in high school. They didn't need to be paying attention to what I was eating. Like, I was an adult, I could feed myself, right? So when I was at home, they didn't notice that I wasn't really eating because, I mean, I'm sure they noticed it a little bit, but it wasn't the same. Like, I would eat lunch at school, breakfast, like, we didn't eat dinner together, like, you know what I mean? But when we were on this trip, they could see all my meals. And my dad was like, she has anorexia. He literally said to my mom, just like, look at the symptoms of anorexia. Hannah has all of those symptoms. We need to do something. And they approached me about it. And I remember I denied it so hard. And I convinced myself, because I wanted to keep going. I did not want to stop not eating. Like, that was the worst thing that I could do at that point in my life. And also I didn't want there to be something wrong with me. Like, I did not want that. I felt like I didn't deserve that attention or any help for this. Like, to me, there couldn't be something wrong with me. That wasn't an option. And so I decided for the rest of the trip, I would eat normally. There was like 2 days left. So I like ate pizza and I ate like a donut or whatever. And I did it because I knew that was the only way I could keep starving myself when I got home. And so that's what I did. We got home from the trip, another month went by, February came, and I didn't get my period, and my mom noticed. And she came up to me and she talked to me about it. And she said, Hannah, you have a problem. You can't deny it anymore. You have a problem. And I just remember crying because finally, oh my God, I'm getting emotional. Finally, I was getting the help that I was so scared to ask for. And the first thing I said to her was like, okay, I'll go get help, but I need to quit water polo. I need to quit water. And finally I admitted that I hated the sport. Like, that was huge for me at the time. And she said, okay, whatever, like you can quit water polo. Like, oh, sure. But anyway, she took me to the doctor, and he recommended a therapist to me. I started going to therapy, started going to I started going to a dietitian. First I went to therapy. I couldn't believe that I was at a therapist's office sitting on a couch. Like, that was crazy to me. And I remember thinking, this isn't gonna work, but I'm gonna do it because I have to. And I went, and at first I thought it was the weirdest thing in my life. But after a few sessions, I started like getting into it. I found myself just crying every single session. And I remember it being such an odd feeling because, normally when I cried, it would be like to my mom, and my mom loves me so much, she would start getting emotional about my emotions. And I remember that with the therapist, I could just cry and she would just look at me. She wouldn't emotionally react. And that to me felt like such a relief. Like, it felt like finally I can just let these emotions out and they're not negatively affecting anybody else. So I went to therapy, and I started really liking therapy, actually. My therapist, she's a queen. Like, so grateful for her. We had a very similar story. She was a swimmer growing up. She went to the same high school as me. So we had a lot in common, and I think that really helped me open up with her. But then I also started going to see my dietitian, the dietitian. And can I just tell you, I hated that so much at first. Like, I literally hated that. I dreaded it. I enjoyed going to therapy. I kind of looked forward to it. I hated going to see my dietitian because she told me all the things I didn't want to hear. And she made me do the things that I did not want to do, which was eating clear foods and telling me you need carbs, and it was just really hard at first, but I kept going mostly because I had to. And over time, I did start enjoying it, and I love her with my whole heart. She saved my life. So that was my eating disorder period of my life. My recovery got to a point where I started gaining weight back, mostly because my mom, and I just have to say, if it weren't for my mother, I would have had to go to inpatient treatment, but my mom did my meals for me. I made a deal where I would eat the food, my mom would prepare my meals, and then I would just have to eat them. And for the most part I did. I won't lie. There were many lunches at school where I did not eat that whole lunch, but otherwise I would eat my food, right? So spring comes and it's swim season. And to be honest, I wasn't probably really at a place where I should swim, but I convinced my doctor, I convinced my dietitian to let me swim because swimming was my motivation. I had loved swimming and I wanted to swim. And so for me, if I could swim, then I'd eat. And so that's what I did. I went through that swim season. I did not swim as well as I had in the past. Big shocker. But I got myself in the pool. I did my best, and it did help me. It did help me motivate me to eat more. But it didn't help to the extent that I thought it would. And I think it's at that point that my love for swimming started to die a little bit. Or just not die, that's so dramatic, but it just it wasn't what it used to have been for me. But I got through that swim season, and then summer swim came. I was able to be with my best friends ever, which was so good for me. And I got my period back that summer. So that was really exciting. And I also told people for the first time. There had been one of my school friends who I'd kind of told, I'd been so food is kind of an issue for me right now. And obviously, this is the funny thing, I was so scared to tell people, but I was skin and bones. Everyone knew. But I was so scared to tell people, which is such a funny thing. It's because you don't realize how tiny you are in the moment. But I kind of told one of my school friends, and over the summer though, I told my swim friends, and that was a really big step for me. And then I also got my period back that summer, which was also huge. So luckily I lost my period for 6 months. I think less, 5. So I'm blessed for that. So grateful that I treated my body so shittily, and look at that. It only lost my cycle for 5 months, which is truly a win considering what I did to my body. But yeah, so then that summer that happened, swam. Then junior year started. I was playing polo in the fall, which was the best thing ever. And actually that was the time when I think my recovery really, I was at a much better point then, much better point. And I met my boyfriend. My Jack. I had more free time because I wasn't playing polo, right? And so I would go to football games. My friend group and I, we got really, really close. It was honestly a really fun time of my life. beginning of high school sucked. End of high school was so fun. Like truly, I did love high school, which is, I know that's not, everyone can say that, but junior year was so fun. My friend group and I, we did so many fun things. Like it was so social, and we started going to football games. And I started getting close with one of my best friends. My first friend I ever made when I was a kid in like elementary school was my friend Clay. And he went to the, so my school was an all girls school, boys school was across the street. He went to the boys school. We started getting close again my junior year. And he introduced me to his friend Jack, and the rest is history, because we're still dating to this day. It's been like 5 years. But yeah, I think that dating Jack was a really big step in my life. One of the biggest reasons being that I told him about my eating disorder. So I ended up talking to my therapist. Like obviously I talked to my therapist about this guy that I was like hanging out with. And at one point she was like, so you should probably tell him like that you kind of have this thing. And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of scared though, but you're right. So we like mapped it out, we planned it out. And the next time I hung out with him, I told him. And it was really huge to me because he looked at me and he said, oh yeah, I already knew that. Like Clay told me. And I was like, oh. And like to me, that was like, wow, like he still wants to be with me. Like he knew from the very beginning that like I struggled with my relationship with food and he wanted to still hang out with me. And I think to me, that was like one of the first moments where I was really like, or not the first moments, but it was just a really big moment of me realizing that I'm enough just as I am. So yeah, he's a good guy. He's a weirdo, but he's a good guy. So anyways, Jack and I were dating at that point. Again, junior year was really fun. Spring came, I did swim. I was a captain with my friend Lauren. It was fine. Again, at this point, I still wasn't as fast because I didn't have as much muscle as I used to have had. And I had other things in my life now. And I don't think that was a bad thing. So yeah, but I swam that season and it was fine. And then summer came, I swam then, it was great. Again, still though, like I loved going to practice because of my friends. I no longer loved going because I got to swim. And then kind of that fall, I wanted to still move my body. And so I started going to the gym so I could swim a few days a week to stay in shape for spring season. Jack and I were dating at this point and we decided that I would teach him how to swim and he would teach me how to lift. So he was the first person to ever bring me to the weight room. And at first I vividly remember, this is kind of funny. So I don't remember what we did but we did some kind of bicep thing, like curls probably. And the next day, like I was so sore, I literally thought I had tennis elbow. But I kind of liked it. And we kept up our thing where I'd take him swimming, he'd take me in the weight room, and I found out it was fun. And eventually I was like, okay, I'm kind of really enjoying this. And like Jack is great, but he's no professional. Like maybe I should just work with like someone who can really teach me how to do these movements, who's qualified in it. So my gym like offered like a free personal training session. So I signed up for that. Worked with a great personal trainer. She was great. She wrote me like a workout program. It was like 3 days a week. She taught me how to squat, how to deadlift, how to overhead press, like all the basics, how to bench press, all the basics, which I'm really grateful for. She gave me a program and I did that. It was like 3 days a week. So then the other 2 days I would like swim or do like a spin class or something fun like at the gym. And I found out that I really, really liked it. Like it was fun for me and it was motivating because it was like, for the first time I'd found a form of exercise that was about making myself stronger, right? Because all I'd ever known was cardio. But this specific exercise, it was like, wow, like I can do this and it can build my body the way I want it to be built. Like I can build a butt. Like people are making me gain weight. If I can lift, I can build a booty. And I liked that. Swim season started in the spring and my two best friends on swim team quit. They decided they weren't gonna do it. So I was still captain, so I did it. I had other friends on the team. Like I really liked the swim team. Like I loved the younger girls. Like I really liked it. But I quickly realized that it's not the same without your friends. And a few weeks into it, like again, I didn't have that same drive to be a really fast swimmer anymore. And my friends weren't on the team and I found myself going to practice and like my friends would hang out or do something and I was like, wow, I wish like I'm going to practice and I can't do that. So I ended up quitting. And let me tell you something right now, I quit 2 sports in my lifetime. The coaches always don't want you to quit. And my swim coach was especially like this. She's like, you're gonna regret this in like 2 years. Let me tell you, it's been like what, 4 years? I never regretted that in a moment. Like once in my life have I ever regretted quitting. So yeah, I quit. It was great. And what was really cool about it too is I remember thinking to myself, I was like, and this is so cool. Oh, this makes my heart so happy. I remember being like, you know, if I wasn't swimming so much, I could lift more. I'm like, okay, Hannah, which was kind of cool. So I still did my last season of rec swim. I still did that because, again, that was like for my friends, and I loved rec swim. I barely tried. I think that overall, like, me learning to care less about swim was really huge because it allowed me to learn how to care less in other areas of my life, which I needed to do at the time. But yeah, this is gonna be a really long video. Thank you for watching. So then I graduated and I was headed to Chapman University in the fall. I was really excited about it. I was going to college. But I found again, freshman year ended up being hard for me. So, you know, I didn't have friends again. And this was my first time living without my mom. And, you know, in high school, I'd gotten to a point where I didn't need my mom to like do everything for me, but I was still at a point where like I needed that accountability to make sure I was eating, if that makes sense. Like, she wasn't making all my meals anymore, but she was still kind of being like, maybe add more to that, Hannah. You know what I mean? But then when I got to college, I didn't have that accountability anymore. I was also eating in the calf. Like, I didn't have a kitchen. So I was eating in the calf. So a lot of my meals were made for me. The calf is what we call like our cafeteria. I don't know. That's what people call it here. And that was hard for me too, because I used to be a really picky eater. This wasn't even like eating disorder. Like, I was such a picky eater as like a child, like just always a picky eater. And so it was really hard for me because genuinely either the food in the calf was still a fear food to me, like it was like bagels or something like French fries or something, or it was food that I genuinely didn't like. So it was hard. I ate like the same things every day. I didn't like going to the calf. Like, it was a whole thing. And then the fact that I didn't want to go to the calf kind of affected my ability to make friends, because obviously food is so social, and that was the time when people like hung out with their friends and like met people, was going to the calf. But I hated going so much that then I didn't have that opportunity to meet people. So it was kind of this like vicious cycle that was happening. And yeah, I kind of turned to my eating disorder again. It was never quite as bad, but I did lose a little bit of weight and wasn't the best. I was exercising. I was going to the gym and I was loving it. I was going to the school gym here, and I was also doing yoga. I had gotten really into yoga as well after I'd quit water polo. Forgot to mention that, but I did go through a phase where I like really loved yoga, and I still like yoga. I just love lifting. The gym was motivating me, like it really was, but I couldn't get myself to eat more. But anyways, freshman year ended. By the end of it, I had actually made really solid friends. I had roommates set out for the next year that I was like so excited to live with. Spoiler, she's still my roommate now, so clearly that worked out well. And yeah, I ended freshman year feeling really good, like feeling excited to be a sophomore in college. I went home for the summer. This was my first summer that I wasn't swimming. And so I got even more into lifting. I kind of wasn't as much into yoga, and I really got into lifting. But I wasn't making as much progress, right? When I first had started lifting, I was like seeing gains. Like, my biceps were starting to like get a little thing, like my quads were looking stronger, my butt was growing, but I was at a point where that wasn't happening anymore. And I knew enough, right? That it was because I wasn't eating enough. And at this point, I'd gotten into like following like fitness people on Instagram. And specifically someone who like I really just felt connected to was Lexi DeYoung. And I followed her, I watched her stories, like saw her posts, and I just connected with her. We had a very similar story. Towards the end of the summer, I decided that I wanted to work with her. I wanted to have a coach because I wanted to get stronger in the gym, and I knew I needed to eat more to do that. And I knew that in order to do that, I needed accountability, and she could be that accountability for me. I was nervous because, you know, I knew that she had people track their macros, and that was something I'd avoided doing, like tracking numbers in food, but I thought maybe it would actually be helpful for me. Like, maybe like it helped her, maybe it can help me too. So I signed up to work with her. I thought when I signed on, I was like, I'll do this for like 3 months, get stronger, I'll move on. Well, 3 months passed and I loved it. I was tracking my food, and I was finally really starting to challenge those fear foods. Like, I was learning that like, hey, like I just need to hit like this amount of carbs. Like, if I want a bagel, that's okay. And I very slowly started like adding in more fun foods. She helped me grow muscle, and I had a blast. Like, it was so fun. So I grew, you know, we worked together, I grew, I challenged food fears. I started going out with friends more. Like, so many amazing things were happening in my life. I was in love with the gym, like in love with it. First semester ended, I'd grown, you know, I went home for winter break. My mom was like, it was cool. Everyone in my life was like, you're eating like bagels. Like, this is crazy. And then went back for spring semester. And I actually started going with my friends to the gym during this semester. I started inviting some of my friends and I would take them through my workouts with me. I had a lot of fun doing it. And they were like, Hannah, like, you're kind of good at this. And I was like, oh, thank you. And I was like, and I really enjoy it. So I decided that summer I would get my personal training certification. But then, you know, March 2020 happened and I got sent home. So got sent home. But the one good thing about it was that I then had extra time because all my classes were online to get my personal training cert. So when I was still finishing my classes, I started that up and I finished it in June. Also by June, I had decided that I wanted to do a dieting phase. Lexi and I had been growing for quite a few months now. And I got to the point where it was like, okay, I'm happy to stay here, or we can keep pushing a little bit farther and then we'll have to do like a dieting phase. And I decided, I think I can do it. Like, I think I can do a dieting phase without going into disordered eating. I was like, I definitely need Lexi, but I can do it. And so that's what we started kind of beginning of the summer, I believe. Right after I got my personal training cert, we kind of started that dieting phase and it went really well. Like, I successfully dieted without restricting. Like, it was crazy. And then also I started my fitness Instagram that summer, which was scary for me, but really exciting. Also, Lexi had started alignment. Right when COVID happened, Lexi let us know that she was joining forces with her roommate at the time, Melissa. My cut ended and I was able to successfully reverse diet out of the cut without like any restrictive habits popping up. And it was at this point that I decided, like, I am loving this whole bodybuilding thing. I kind of want to take it to the next step. And so I decided that Lexi and I would go through another growing phase and then I would prep in 2021 for my first show, which is crazy. So that's what we did. We grew and I started working in a gym. So I came back to live down here in Orange. I got a job working at EOS Fitness for personal training. I loved it. It was really fun. It's a grind working. If you've ever worked in a gym, you know, it's a grind, but it's so fun. I met one of my really good friends, Emily, there, and it was just fun to like be surrounded all the time with like fitness people. I also, when I came back down to Orange, I started training at a gym. The school gym, Chapman Gym, was closed, which is where I had been training prior to COVID. But there was a gym that was open called Flex Fitness, started training there. And I literally walked into that gym and I said, this is where I'm gonna prep. Like, this is where I'm gonna prep. And sure enough, I did. I love that gym. It's the best gym ever. If you live in OC, go to Flex Fitness. And eventually I decided, like, okay, I'm gonna prep. Lexi recommended Will Sage to me to be my prep coach. Got on the phone with him, really liked him. I knew he was really knowledgeable. Like, he was smart. Like, prep is very intensive, and luckily I knew that. And I knew I needed a smart person who's gonna guide me through this, and it's gonna be healthy. So I ended up working with Will. Around, like, I think February, I switched over from Lexi to Will to finish my growing season with him so we could start running my body. And then I planned to start prep in like the summertime, but then I ended up I just started prep, I think in like May, beginning of May, end of May, somewhere along there. Started prep. We picked a show date for August, started my first prep, and I freaking loved it. I loved prepping. The grind was a grind, but I was living for it. I loved it so much. I was on a meal plan, which I could do I've done a live about my prep on my Instagram, so you can kind of check that out if you want like more of a deep dive into my prep. But yeah, loved prepping. And also this is the time that I applied to work for Alignment. So Alignment truly changed my life. Like, I can't explain where I'd be without Lexi and without Alignment. Like, truly changed my life. And the company had been expanding for quite some time, and they'd hired a few assistant coaches. And one day I went and lived with Lexi because at this point we were friends. Basically, she was like, you should apply to be an assistant coach next time we hire. And I said, and like literally when she said that, I was like, oh my God, because I had wanted that so bad, but I didn't feel like I had imposter syndrome. I didn't feel like I was qualified yet for it, even though I was certified, I had experience with clients and all of this stuff. And she said that, and I said, oh. So then I waited, and I think it was in like June, or maybe, yeah, beginning of June, they put out their application, and I applied and I got the job, and I really cried when I got the job. Like, it was surreal, and now that's what I do. And it's so cool because, so in school I'm a leadership minor, and we talk a lot about servant leadership. The true test of whether someone is a servant leader is whether the person or the company goes on to create more servants. And that's exactly what alignment did for me, right? Because now I get to serve as an alignment coach, and I get to help other women like that are going through similar things that I went through. And like, it's so cool. I love it so much. I've truly found kind of like my calling within it. And I love what I do. It was really good timing too, because I obviously work from home, and prep starts really getting gnarly like the second half with like cardio and stuff. So I had more flexibility with my schedule, which was nice. And then, you know, August came, my show day came. It was really fun. I got to compete with my friend Mia, and it was, so again, I loved the process of prepping. I was kind of like, am I gonna love being on stage? But let me tell you, I loved being on stage. I loved it so much. It was like, I had my fire back. Like, you know, that girl, that young girl who like loved swimming, it was like, I found that again in competitive bodybuilding. I actually ended up, like, my goal going into it was just to like bring my best. It was my first show. Like, I wanted to place, like, you know, I didn't want to like lose. I wanted to place, but I ended up winning both my classes. I got to walk for the overall. Did not get the overall just because I'm too small. So that's what we're working on now. You know, I do definitely want to compete again. Like, again, I loved it, but I need more muscle tissue. So that's what's going on right now. I'm in a growing phase. Post-show, I got some blood work done, and my cortisol was really high. So we've been working on just kind of reducing that. I also, most recent part of my fitness journey is that I stopped taking my birth control. That's like more health stuff, but yeah, so now I'm just working on getting like my natural cycle back. But luckily Will, my coach, is like, he knows his shit. So I know it's gonna happen. It's just a good practice of patience for me. So that is my journey. That is my fitness journey. This has been a very long video, so thank you for watching. I hope this was helpful. I am a firm believer that one of the biggest ways that we can make change is by simply sharing our journey, because I know in my own journey, hearing other people talk about what they've been through has helped me so much. So if this video, you know, if you got something out of it, good. If it helped one person, that's great. But yeah, seriously, thank you so much for watching. I'm gonna put the link if you wanna apply for coaching to work with me on alignment. I'll put that in my bio. My Instagram's in my bio. Please like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you next time. I'm sat here editing this video, and I wanted to give a little update because I filmed this on Thursday. It is now Tuesday, and I got my period. I started my period on Sunday. She's still going strong today, and it's really exciting because this is, like I mentioned, like my first natural cycle. So I was like 16, 17. So wanted to give you that update, and if you want to hear kind of more about that, let me know, because I think it's something, I don't know, maybe you could get value from my hormone kind of journey and experience. But this body is very healthy, and I'm very grateful.